Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. Jessica stood stiffly in the doorway, her arms crossed. "Don't come back here again," she said, her voice cold and flat. The words hung in the air, sharp and unforgiving. I blinked, stunned. "What are you talking about, Jessica? I just came to see my grandson." She shifted her weight, her expression hardening. "Julian and I have talked about it. We don't think it's healthy for him to be around you anymore." My heart hammered against my ribs. Me? What have I done?" My voice trembled, but I fought to keep it steady. "You're disruptive," he said, the words sounding rehearsed. "Your constant visits, your opinions, it's unsettling for him. For us." I reached out a hand, instinctively wanting to bridge the distance between us, but she stepped back. "No, Kendra, this is for the best. Please, just go." I looked past her, hoping to catch a glimpse of my grandson, but he wasn't there. "Can I at least say goodbye to him?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jessica shook her head, a tight, dismissive gesture. "He's napping. It's better this way." The front door loomed before me, cold and unwelcoming. I felt a wave of dizziness, a sudden rush of nausea. This couldn't be happening. I clutched the strap of my purse, my knuckles white. "This is ridiculous," I managed, my voice cracking. "I haven't done anything wrong." Jessica simply stared at me, her eyes devoid of any warmth. "Just go, Kendra." I took a shaky breath, the air catching in my throat. "Fine," I said, the word laced with a bitterness I couldn't contain. "I'll go." I turned and walked out, my steps heavy and slow. The morning sun felt harsh against my skin, the chirping of birds a mocking soundtrack to my despair. As I reached my car, I fumbled with the keys, my hands trembling uncontrollably. I sank into the driver's seat, the leather cool against my cheek. I sat there for a moment, numb, the world outside blurring into a meaningless kaleidoscope of color and movement. Then a single tear rolled down my cheek, followed by another and another. I let the tears flow, a silent testament to the pain that ripped through me. The drive home was a blur. I barely registered the familiar streets, the houses, the trees. I parked the car in the driveway and stumbled out, my legs weak. The house felt empty, cavernous. I walked through the silent rooms, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. Every corner, every photograph, every piece of furniture seemed to whisper reminders of what I had lost. My grandson's laughter, the smell of his baby shampoo, the warmth of his small hand in mine, gone, all gone. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the framed photograph on my nightstand. It was a picture of me holding my grandson, his tiny face beaming up at me. My heart ached with a physical pain. I picked up the picture, tracing the outline of his face with my finger. "I won't let them erase me," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. "I won't let them win." A flicker of defiance ignited within me, a tiny spark in the vast darkness of my despair. I stood up, a new resolve hardening my features. I walked over to my closet and opened it, my eyes scanning the neatly ranged clothes. I pulled out a suitcase and began packing. Clothes, shoes, toiletries, essentials. I wouldn't need much. I wouldn't be here long. As I folded a silk scarf, My eyes fell on a small wooden box tucked away on the top shelf. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against the smooth, polished wood. Inside, nestled amongst layers of velvet, lay my grandmother's jewelry, a diamond necklace, a pair of pearl earrings, a delicate gold bracelet, pieces I had treasured for years, reminders of a different time, a different life. I closed the box, a slow, deliberate movement. I wouldn't be needing these anymore either. I placed the box in the suitcase, on top of the neatly folded clothes. Then I went to the desk in the corner of the room and opened the top drawer. Inside lay a stack of papers, the deeds to my house, the title to my car, the documents outlining my savings. I picked up the papers, the weight of them heavy in my hands. These were the remnants of my old life, the life I had built, the life they had taken from me. I walked to the living room, the papers clutched tightly in my hand. I stood in the center of the room, looking around at the familiar furniture, the paintings on the walls, the photographs on the mantelpiece. Each object held a memory, a story. But these memories, these stories, were no longer mine. They were tainted, poisoned by the bitterness of betrayal. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of a real estate agent. "Yes, hello," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I'm calling to inquire about selling my house." A new chapter was beginning, a chapter filled with uncertainty, but also with the promise of something more, something better. I would rebuild my life, brick by brick, stitch by stitch, and they would all see, what I was capable of. Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm inside me. "You're not welcome here, Kendra," Jessica had said, her voice cold. Julian standing silently beside her, a stiff, disapproving statue. "We don't want you near our son." The words echoed in the silence of my now empty home. Just hours ago, it had been filled with the laughter of my grandson, the scent of cookies baking, the warmth of family. Now the air felt thick with rejection, the silence heavy with loss. I sank into my favorite armchair, the worn cushions offering little comfort. How could my own son, James, allow this? How could he let his wife banish me, his own mother, from his life, from his son's life? My grandson, barely a year old, with eyes so full of innocent wonder. I wouldn't see him grow up, wouldn't witness his first steps, hear his first words, read him his first bedtime story. "It's not fair," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. The phone rang, jarring me from my spiraling thoughts. It was my sister, Sarah. "Kendra, are you all right?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "I heard what happened. I'm so sorry." I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. "Don't say anything," Sarah continued, her voice soothing. "Just listen. I'm coming over. I managed a week. Thank you." Before hanging up, the thought of seeing Sarah, of having someone to hold onto in this storm, was the only thing that stopped the tears from flowing. Sarah arrived an hour later, her arms full of groceries and a fierce determination in her eyes. "Right," she declared, setting down the bags. "We need tea and a plan." She bustled round the kitchen, putting the kettle on and pulling out mugs. "Tell me everything," she said, handing me a steaming cup of Earl Grey. And so I did. I poured out my heart, the words tumbling out in a torrent of anger, hurt, and confusion. Sarah listened patiently, her hand resting on mine, offering silent support. When I was finally done, she looked at me, her eyes filled with understanding. They can't get away with this, Kendra, she said firmly. You're a strong woman. You'll get through this. Her words, although meant to comfort, stirred a strange feeling within me. Not comfort, not yet, but a flicker of something else. Resolve. I looked around my living room, at the familiar furniture, the photographs on the walls, the memories they held, memories of happier times, of family gatherings, of my son as a boy, full of laughter and mischief. You're right, Sarah, I said, a new strength entering my voice. They won't get away with this. I wouldn't let the bitterness consume me. I wouldn't let them win. I have to do something, I murmured, more to myself than to Sarah. What are you thinking? Sarah asked, her eyes searching mine. I looked at the sewing machine in the corner, a gift from my mother years ago. It had always been a source of comfort, a way to create something beautiful from simple materials. A spark ignited within me. I have an idea, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. I'm going to start a business. Sarah's eyes widened. A business? Doing what? She asked. Sewing, I replied, the idea taking shape in my mind. I'll make beautiful clothes, unique designs, things people will cherish. I knew I was good. My mother had taught me everything she knew, and I'd always had a knack for it. It had always been a hobby, a passion. But now know it could be something more. But where will you get the money? Sarah asked, practical as ever. I looked around the room again, this time with a new perspective. My house, filled with years of accumulated possessions. The antique furniture, the silver tea service, the wedding china I'd never used, even my jewelry, pieces I'd inherited from my own mother. I'll sell some things, I said, the decision solidifying in my mind. Things I don't need anymore. It wouldn't be easy, letting go of these pieces of my past, but it was a necessary step. A step towards building a new future, a future where I wouldn't be defined by my son's rejection, but by my own strength and resilience. Are you sure about this, Kendra? Sarah asked, her voice laced with concern. Absolutely, I replied, the smile on my lips growing wider. This isn't just about money, Sarah. It's about taking back my life. It's about showing them, showing everyone, that I'm not going to let this break me. I'm going to build something beautiful from the ashes of their cruelty. I stood up, a newfound energy coursing through me. Help me pack these things up, Sarah, I said, gesturing towards the china cabinet. It's time for a fresh start. The rain outside continued to fall, but inside, a different kind of storm was brewing. A storm of determination, of creativity, of quiet, simmering revenge. I had a feeling Jessica and Julian would regret their decision. They just didn't know it yet. Rain lashed against the window pane, mimicking the storm inside me. The small, two-bedroom house felt cavernous, echoing with the absence of laughter, of tiny footsteps, of the scent of baby powder that used to cling to the air. I picked up a framed photograph from the mantelpiece. It was taken on my grandson's first birthday, a riot of colorful balloons and frosting-smeared smiles. My son, James, held him aloft, his face beaming with pride. Beside him stood Jessica, Julian at her side, her hand resting possessively on my son's arm. They looked like a perfect little family, a family that no longer had room for me. "It's for the best, Mom," Jessica had said, her voice clipped, her eyes cold. "You're just too much. Too much love, too much joy, too much grandmother." I traced my finger across the glass, over my grandson's tiny, outstretched hand. He wouldn't even remember me. He was barely two when they shut me out, when they decided I was no longer a welcome presence in their lives. "We need space," James had mumbled, avoiding my gaze. Space. From his own mother. I set the photograph back down, the click against the mantelpiece startlingly loud in the quiet house. The silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. Everywhere I looked, I saw ghosts of happier times. The rocking chair I used to nurse James in, the high chair where my grandson had gleefully flung spaghetti, the crayon marks on the wall that I'd stubbornly refused to wash off. Each object was a sharp, painful reminder of what I had lost. I wandered into the kitchen, the linoleum cold beneath my bare feet. The fruit bowl on the counter was overflowing with oranges, bought just yesterday, a habit from when James and his family would pop in for a visit. Now the oranges just sat there, slowly ripening, a vibrant symbol of hope gone stale. "He loved these," I whispered, picking one up and running my thumb over the smooth skin. "My grandson, he loved these." The thought was a physical ache in my chest. I opened the cupboard, pulling out a chipped mug, the one James had made for me in pottery class when he was 10. "World's best, Mom," it proclaimed in wobbly, childish lettering. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "World's best, Mom," relegated to the sidelines, erased from the picture. I filled the mug with lukewarm tea, the steam doing little to warm the icy hollowness inside me. I sat at the kitchen table, the chair across from me empty, a stark reminder of my solitude. I sipped the tea, the taste bland and unsatisfying. The rain continued to batter the windows, the rhythmic drumming a mournful soundtrack to my despair. I looked around the room, at the faded wallpaper, the worn furniture, the accumulation of a lifetime of memories, now tinged with bitterness. This house, filled with so much love, now felt like a prison. Every corner whispered of lost connections, of broken promises. "I'll always be there for you, Mom," James had said countless times, a reassurance I'd foolishly believed. Now, those words echoed in my ears, mocking me with their emptiness. I closed my eyes, letting the tears I'd been holding back finally fall. Hot, silent tears of grief and anger, and a deep, gnawing sense of injustice. How could they do this to me? How could they just erase me from their lives? I had given them everything, poured my heart and soul into my son, into my grandson, and this was my reward, to be cast aside, discarded like a broken toy. The image of my grandson's face, his bright, innocent eyes, flashed in my mind. The thought of him growing up without me, not knowing the love I had for him, was unbearable. "It's not fair," I choked out, the words barely audible above the drumming rain. I opened my eyes, a flicker of resolve igniting in their depths. I wouldn't let them win. I wouldn't let them diminish me, erase me. I would find a way to rebuild my life, to create a future for myself, even if it was one without them. I would show them, and myself, that I was more than just a mother, more than just a grandmother. I was Kendra Miles, and I wasn't going to let them break me. The rain continued to fall, but the storm inside me had begun to subside, replaced by a quiet, steely determination. I looked at the wedding china in the display cabinet, a flicker of an idea forming in my mind. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end. Maybe this was just the beginning. Rain lashed against the windows, mimicking the storm raging inside me. The silence in the house was thick, heavy, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards. I sat on the edge of my bed, the floral comforter rumpled and cold beneath me. Jessica's words, "We don't want you interfering in our lives anymore," echoed in my ears. Each repetition felt like another twist of the knife. My own son, James, hadn't even defended me. He just stood there, silent and ashamed, while his wife dismissed me like an unwanted stray. The image of my grandson's face, the one I might never see again, blurred in my mind. A sob caught in my throat. I swallowed it down, a bitter taste on my tongue. This couldn't be the end. I wouldn't let it be. I stood up, the sudden movement scattering the dust motes dancing in the moonlight filtering through the gaps in the curtains. My reflection stared back at me from the antique mirror hanging on the wall. A stranger looked back hollow-eyed, defeated. "No," I whispered, my voice raspy. "This is not you. You are stronger than this." I walked over to the window and stared out at the rain-slicked streets. A single streetlight flickered in the distance, a small beacon in the overwhelming darkness. An idea began to form, a spark of defiance igniting in my chest. I wouldn't beg them to let me back in. I wouldn't waste another breath pleading for their acceptance. I would build my own life, a life they wouldn't be able to ignore. The first step was the hardest. Opening the drawer of my dresser, I pulled out the velvet box containing my wedding china. Each delicate piece, a reminder of happier times, now felt heavy with the weight of lost promises. "I love these," I murmured, tracing the delicate floral pattern with my fingertip. "But they are just things, and right now, I needed more than just things. I needed a fresh start." The next morning, I called an auction house. "I have some items I'd like to sell," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. The woman on the other end of the line was efficient and professional. We arranged a viewing for the following week. Over the next few days, I went through the house, sorting through a lifetime of accumulated memories. The sewing machines, a gift from my mother when I was a young girl, were next. They had been gathering dust in the attic for years. Now, as I ran my hand over the smooth metal, I felt a flicker of excitement. Maybe, just maybe, I could finally put them to use. My jewelry box followed, filled with trinkets and treasures collected over the years. A diamond pendant from James's father, a pearl necklace from my own mother. Each piece held a story, a memory, but the memories were mine, and I would carry them with me, regardless of what I chose to keep or sell. Selling the house itself felt like tearing off a limb. This was the place where James had grown up, where we had celebrated birthdays and holidays, where we had built a life together. But the walls now felt like a prison, each room echoing with the ghosts of what I had lost. The real estate agent, a young woman named Sarah, was surprisingly understanding. "I know this can't be easy," she said, her voice gentle, "but sometimes A fresh start is exactly what we need." Her words resonated with me. I nodded, signing the papers with a firm hand. The money from the sales, more than I had expected, sat in my bank account, a tangible symbol of my newfound freedom. It was a small fortune, enough to rent a small apartment downtown, and maybe, just maybe, enough to start a small business. The idea had been brewing in my mind for days, ever since I'd rediscovered my mother's sewing machines. I'd always loved to sew, creating beautiful dresses and intricate embroidery as a young girl. It had been a passion, a creative outlet that had faded over the years, buried beneath the demands of family and life. But now, the thought of picking up a needle and thread again filled me with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I spent hours online, researching sewing machines, fabrics, and business licenses. The world of fashion, once a distant dream, now seemed within reach. I envisioned a small boutique filled with elegant dresses and handcrafted accessories. I imagined women, confident and stylish, wearing my creations. The thought sent a thrill through me. One evening, as I sat in my new apartment, surrounded by boxes and fabric swatches, I received a call from an unknown number. Hesitantly, I answered. It was Sarah, the real estate agent. "I have some good news," she said, her voice bright. "I found a perfect little storefront for rent. It's in a great location, lots of foot traffic. Are you interested?" My heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was my chance. "Yes," I said, my voice trembling with excitement. "Yes, I am." The storm inside me had finally subsided, replaced by a quiet resolve, a sense of anticipation. I was starting over, rebuilding my life, stitch by stitch, and I had a feeling Jessica and Julian would be hearing from me again, soon. The dust swirled around my ankles, the smell of popcorn and cotton candy thick in the air. I adjusted the hand-painted sign above my stall, Kendra's Creations, trying to ignore the tremor in my hand. This county fair, once a joyous family tradition, now felt like a vast, empty space. It had only been a few months since Jessica had looked me in the eye and said, "We don't want you influencing our son. Stay away." Those words echoed in my head as I arranged my carefully sewn quilts, embroidered pillowcases, and hand-wear-upon baby blankets. Each stitch held a silent prayer, a whisper of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. A young couple approached, their eyes wide with curiosity. "These are beautiful," the woman said, running a hand over a patchwork quilt. "Did you make all of these yourself?" "I did," I replied, a small smile touching my lips. It was the first genuine smile I'd felt in weeks. "I've been sewing since I was a little girl." The couple spent a good while examining my work, asking questions about the different fabrics and techniques. "My mother used to make quilts just like these," the man said, a wistful look in his eyes. "They always brought me so much comfort." His words resonated deep within me, a reminder of the warmth and love I used to share with my own family. "How much for this one?" the woman asked, holding up a baby blanket with a whimsical elephant design. We agreed on a price, and they moved on, promising to return later for a quilt they'd admired. The first sale of the day. A tiny victory, but a victory nonetheless. More people stopped by, drawn in by the vibrant colors and intricate designs. A group of teenagers giggled over some embroidered tote bags. A young mother admired a set of bibs, and an elderly gentleman reminisced about his grandmother's needlework. Each interaction, each shared story, chipped away at the wall of loneliness that had been building round me. This reminds me of something my grandmother would make, a woman said, her voice thick with emotion. She taught me how to sew when I was a girl. It's a wonderful skill to have, I replied. It's more than just making things. It's about creating something beautiful from nothing. She nodded, her eyes glistening. My grandmother's gone now, she said softly, but every time I sew, I feel like she's with me. Her words struck a chord, a painful reminder of the precious bond I'd lost with my own grandson. I swallowed hard, pushing back the tears that threatened to spill over. The afternoon wore on, and my stall became increasingly crowded. People were drawn to the quality of my work, the attention to detail, and the stories I shared about each piece. I talked about the inspiration behind the designs, the memories they evoked, and the joy I found in creating them. It was as if the act of sharing my passion, my craft, was mending a piece of my broken heart. I sold almost everything, my small cash box overflowing with bills and coins. The weight of it in my hands felt more substantial than any inheritance, any family heirloom. It was the weight of my own hard work, my own resilience, my own rebirth. A little girl, no older than 5, tugged on her mother's skirt, pointing at a small, brightly colored doll. "Mommy, I want that one," she exclaimed. The mother smiled, picking up the doll and examining it. "It's lovely," she said to me. "Did you make this too?" "I did," I replied, my heart swelling with pride. "It's one of my favorites." The little girl clutched the doll tightly, her eyes shining with delight. "Thank you, Mommy," she cried, hugging the doll close. Watching them walk away, hand in hand, a flicker of hope ignited within me. Maybe, just maybe, one day I could share that kind of joy with my own grandson again. The setting sun cast long shadows across the fairgrounds as I packed up my remaining items, a sense of weary satisfaction washing over me. The day had been long and emotionally draining, but it had also been a turning point. I had taken something broken, something lost, and transformed it into something beautiful, something valuable. And as I walked away from the bustling fair, I knew this was just the beginning. I had a plan, and more importantly, I had the will to see it through. The faint melody of a distant carousel seemed to echo my newfound sense of purpose, a sweet, bittersweet lullaby promising a brighter future. The musty smell of fabric and wood glue hung heavy in the air of Harold's upholstery. I hadn't imagined my life would lead me here, working part-time in a dusty shop, especially after Jessica's cruel words still echoed in my mind. "You're not welcome here. Not anymore." I smoothed down my apron, the rough fabric a stark contrast to the silks and linens I used to sew for my family. Harold, a kind, portly man with perpetually dust-covered spectacles, beamed at me. "Kendra, you're a godsend. I've got a mountain of orders, and my usual seamstress is out with a broken wrist." I smiled faintly, happy to help. "Harold." I threaded a needle, the familiar rhythm a small comfort in this unfamiliar world. It wasn't the life I'd envisioned, but it was a start. Days bled into weeks, the repetitive motions of stitching, and stuffing a bomb to my aching heart. Each perfectly placed seam, each flawlessly upholstered chair felt like a small victory against the emptiness that had threatened to consume me. "You have a real knack for this, Kendra," Harold said one afternoon, watching as I transformed a worn-out armchair into a vibrant piece of furniture. "A real eye for detail. Thank you, Harold," I replied, my fingers still busy with the needle and thread. "It's something I've always enjoyed." He chuckled. "Well, you're certainly better than my usual girl, and faster too." He winked. "Don't tell her I said that." One day, Harold looked particularly flustered. He paced back and forth, muttering to himself and clutching a stack of papers. "Taxes," he groaned, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. "These confounded taxes are driving me mad." He looked at me almost pleadingly. "I'm drowning in paperwork, Kendra. Numbers and we don't exactly get along. Maybe I can help," I offered tentatively. "I used to manage the family finances back when I trailed off, not wanting to dwell on the past." Harold's eyes widened. "You know about finances?" He practically shoved the papers at me. "Please, Kendra, take a look." I'd be eternally grateful. I spent the next few hours poring over Harold's accounts. Years of managing household budgets, balancing checkbooks, and even dabbling in small investments had given me a practical understanding of financial management. Jessica and Julian had scoffed at my old-fashioned ways, preferring to rely on apps and online banking. They hadn't understood the satisfaction of a perfectly balanced ledger, the quiet power of knowing where every penny went. "Harold," I said, after a thorough review, "your books are a bit disorganized." He winced. "I knew it. I'm doomed." I shook my head, smiling. "Not doomed, just in need of a system. See, you're recording your expenses here, but not categorizing them properly, and your income tracking as well. It's practically non-existent." I explained to him how to implement a simple, yet effective system for tracking his income and expenses, how to categorize his purchases, and even how to identify potential tax deductions he'd been overlooking. Harold watched me with a mixture of awe and gratitude. "Kendra," he said finally, leaning back in his newly upholstered chair, "you're a lifesaver. I had no idea my business was bleeding money in so many small ways." He grinned. "Imagine what I could do if I actually knew what I was doing." I smiled. It was a small victory, a flicker of the competence and control I'd lost when Jessica and Julian had pushed me out of their lives. Helping Harold felt good, not just because I was making a difference, but because it reminded me of who I was before the hurt and the exile. Over the next few weeks, I continued to help Harold with his finances, streamlining his bookkeeping, and even helping him negotiate better deals with his suppliers. His business, once teetering on the edge of financial chaos, began to stabilize and even thrive. "You're a miracle worker, Kendra," Harold exclaimed one afternoon, brandishing a newly arrived check. "This is the biggest order I've ever landed." He paused, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know," he said slowly, "I've been thinking I could really use someone like you full-time. Someone to manage the books, help with the orders, maybe even expand the business. What do you say, Kendra?" "Partnership." The offer hung in the air, heavy with possibility. "A partnership," My own business, a chance to rebuild not just my finances, but my life. A wave of emotion washed over me, a mix of surprise, gratitude, and a quiet, simmering sense of something else, something that felt a lot like triumph. I looked at Harold, at his hopeful face, and then at the bustling shop round me, filled with the hum of sewing machines and the scent of fresh fabric. This wasn't just a job, it was an opportunity to prove to myself, and maybe even to Jessica and Julian, that I was more than they thought, that I was capable, resilient, and far from finished. Harold, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face, I think we can make something truly special here. The seed of an idea, a plan for a future I never could have imagined, began to take root, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of excitement, a whisper of the life I was going to build, stitch by stitch. The Ferris wheel creaked a rusty rhythm against the clear autumn sky. I smoothed down the skirt of my best dress. It was a simple cotton number, but it felt special today. I'd meticulously sewn a small embroidered daisy chain along the hem, a touch of whimsy I hoped would bring me luck. It was the county fair, and I was here to show off my creations, hoping for a few sales to keep my little venture afloat. These are lovely, a woman with kind eyes and a stylishly draped scarf said, pausing at my stall. You have a real talent. I blushed, unsure how to respond to compliments anymore, after Jessica and Julian had banished me from their lives, stripping me of my role as a grandmother. I'd retreated into myself. Thank you, I managed. I enjoy it. She picked up a child's quilted jacket, admiring the intricate stitching. How much for this one? She asked. We haggled good-naturedly, settling on a price that felt fair to both of us. As the day went on, more people stopped, drawn in by the brightly colored fabrics and unique designs. I sold a few baby blankets, a couple of tote bags, and even a custom embroidered pillowcase. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to cover the cost of my stall and buy groceries for the week. Then, a woman with an air of authority approached. She introduced herself as Ms. Dubois, the owner of the Gilded Thimble, a high-end boutique in the wealthier part of town. I've been watching you all afternoon, she said, her gaze sharp and appraising. Your work is exceptional. The quality, the detail, it's unlike anything I've seen around here. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. This was the break I'd been praying for. Oh, thank you, I stammered, clutching a half-finished baby blanket. That's very kind of you to say. Ms. Dubois smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. I'm not just being kind, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I'm offering you a consignment contract. I felt a lump form in my throat. Consignment. At the Gilded Thimble. It was a shop known for its exclusive clientele, the kind of place Jessica frequented. I remembered overhearing her gushing to Julian about a silk scarf she'd bought there, boasting about how much it cost. The thought sent a flicker of something dark and satisfying through me. A consignment contract, I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. Ms. Dubois nodded. I'm willing to showcase your pieces in my boutique, she explained, her voice laced with businesslike efficiency. We'll split the profits, of course. She named a percentage that was more than generous, a figure that made my head spin. I don't know what to say, I whispered. still trying to process the magnitude of her offer. This could change everything. This could be my ticket to a new life, a life independent of Jessica and Julian's cruelty. Say yes, Miss Dubois said, a playful glint in her eye. This is a fantastic opportunity. Your work deserves to be seen by a wider audience. I took a deep breath, the scent of cotton candy and frying onions momentarily forgotten. Yes, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. Yes, I accept. Miss Dubois beamed. Wonderful, she exclaimed, holding out her hand. I have a feeling this is the beginning of a beautiful partnership. We shook hands, sealing the deal. As Ms. Dubois walked away, I stood there, staring at the empty space where she'd been, a slow smile spreading across my face. The Ferris wheel continued its rhythmic creak, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The fair was winding down, but for me, it felt like a new beginning. The lump in my throat had dissolved, replaced by a sense of quiet triumph. I glanced at the embroidered daisy chain on my hem. Maybe it had brought me luck after all. I couldn't wait to tell Ms. Dubois about the special collection. I was working on a line of exquisite christening gowns and baby blankets, crafted with the finest silks and linens. They were perfect for the discerning clientele of the gilded thimble, and, just maybe, they might catch the eye of a certain someone who thought they could banish me from their life. I had a feeling this Christmas would be very different from the last. The bell above the boutique door chimed, a cheerful counterpoint to the hollowness I still carried inside. Another customer, drawn in by the window display I'd painstakingly ranged just that morning. Excuse me, a woman with a sharp bob, and an even sharper, I said. Is this piece one of a kind? She gestured to a silk scarf, hand-painted with a design inspired by my grandmother's rose garden, the one I wasn't allowed to visit anymore. It is, I replied, smoothing the fabric. I designed and painted it myself. Jessica's dismissive words, "You're just clinging to the past, Mom," echoed in my mind. But her cruelty, once so potent, now felt strangely distant, like the memory of a bad dream. The woman purchased the scarf, adding, "I love the vibrancy of the colors. It reminds me of summer evenings." Her words were a balm, a small validation against Jessica's harsh judgment. The next few hours were a blur of activity. My small collection, carefully curated from the remnants of my old life reimagined, repurposed, reborn, was flying off the shelves. My wedding china, once destined for gatherings Jessica deemed too old-fashioned, now formed the basis of a series of mosaic-tiled mirrors, each reflecting a new, brighter future. "These are exquisite," a young bride-to-be exclaimed, holding up a mirror framed with delicate blue and white porcelain. "My fiancé, Julian, would love this for our new apartment." The casual mention of a fiancé, the innocent excitement in her voice, stung a little, reminding me of the bond I had lost with my own son, fractured by Jessica's influence. But the sting was fleeting, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of witnessing my own creations bring joy to others. I sold a hand-stitched quilt, pieced together from scraps of my children's old clothes, each patch whispering a memory I refused to let Jessica erase. A set of embroidered pillowcases, adorned with intricate floral designs, found a home with a woman who admired their vintage charm. The word vintage, once a synonym for outdated and unwanted in Jessica's vocabulary, now felt like a badge of honor. These remind me of my grandmother's handiwork, the woman said, her voice thick with emotion. I smiled, feeling a kinship with this stranger, a shared appreciation for the beauty of tradition and the enduring power of memory. By the end of the day, the boutique owner, a kind woman named Beatrice, who had taken a chance on my fledgling talent, approached me with a wide smile. "Kendra," she said, "I'm blown away. We've nearly sold out everything you brought in." She held up a small ledger, showing me the sales figures. I couldn't believe my eyes. The amount, more than I had dared to hope for, represented not just financial gain, but a profound sense of accomplishment, a validation of my worth beyond the narrow confines of Jessica's judgment. "This is incredible," I stammered, my voice choked with emotion. "You have a real gift, Kendra," Beatrice continued, placing a reassuring hand on my arm. "These pieces tell stories. People connect with them." Her words resonated deep within me. The stories woven into each stitch, each brushstroke, were the stories of my life, the joys and sorrows, the love and loss, all transformed into something beautiful and enduring. They were a testament to my resilience, my refusal to be defined by the negativity of others. They were my revenge, silent but powerful, a reclaiming of my own narrative. "I'd love to feature your work more prominently in the shop," Beatrice said, pulling me from my thoughts. "Perhaps a dedicated display area. We could even host a small exhibition." Her words ignited a spark of excitement, a vision of a future I hadn't dared to imagine just a few weeks ago. A future where my creativity was celebrated, where my worth was recognized, where my voice, once silenced, could finally be heard. I would love that," I managed to say, a sense of quiet triumph blossoming within me. Jessica's words, once a constant refrain of disapproval, now faded into the background, drowned out by the hum of possibility, the promise of a new beginning, a life built not on resentment, but on the strength of my own creation. The seed of an idea, sown in the soil of my heartbreak, was beginning to sprout, and I knew, with a certainty that surprised even myself, that it would grow into something magnificent, something Jessica could never take away. The first step was securing a dedicated workspace. Maybe, just maybe, I could even afford that little studio space I'd always dreamed, the one overlooking the ocean. Sunlight streamed through the large front windows of my shop, illuminating the rows of mannequins draped in my latest creations. Miles of style, the gold lettering proclaimed on the glass door, a name I'd chosen carefully. It represented more than just my designs. It represented the miles I'd traveled, emotionally and physically, to reach this point. Jessica had told me I was nothing, a has-been, someone who would fade into the background. "You'll be forgotten, Kendra," she'd spat. "Just another old woman with nothing to offer." Well, Jessica, look at me now. This storefront, on the busiest street downtown, is my answer. The scent of fresh fabric and the gentle hum of the sewing machines in the back room filled the air. My shop wasn't just a business. It was a sanctuary, a testament to my resilience. A young couple entered, their eyes wide with wonder as they took in the displays. "Wow," the woman breathed. "These are stunning." I smiled, a warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. "Thank you," I said, approaching them. "Are you looking for something in particular?" "We're getting married next spring," the man replied, "and we haven't found anything we love." He gestured towards a gown shimmering with intricate beadwork. "That one is incredible." I felt a surge of pride. "I designed that one myself," I told them, inspired by the blooming dessert flowers near my old home. The afternoon passed in a blur of consultations and compliments. My designs, once relegated to dusty boxes in the attic, were now being admired, desired. Each sale felt like a small victory, a validation of my worth. When a woman purchased a vibrant red evening gown, declaring it the most beautiful dress she'd ever seen, I couldn't help but think of Jessica's cruel words. "Forgotten," she had said. Well, I wasn't forgotten. I was being remembered, celebrated even. As the day drew to a close, I tallied the sales, a satisfied smile playing on my lips. It was more than I could have hoped for. I was building something real, something lasting. I locked up the shop, the jingle of the bill a cheerful counterpoint to the silence of the empty street. As I walked towards my car, I noticed a familiar figure across the road. Julian. He stood staring at my shop, his expression a mixture of disbelief and was that regret. He hadn't seen me yet. Engrossed as he was in the window display, I watched him for a moment, a quiet triumph swelling in my chest. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. I didn't need to hear the conversation to know who he was calling. I could practically see Jessica's face, contorted in disbelief, as Julian stammered out the words, "Miles of style, it's hers. Candra's." I imagined Jessica's carefully constructed world tilting on its axis. The realization that I hadn't faded away, hadn't crumbled under their rejection, hitting her with the force of a tidal wave. This shop, this success, was more than just revenge. It was my liberation. I slipped into my car and drove away, leaving Julian standing there, phone pressed to his ear, a small, bewildered figure against the backdrop of my brightly lit storefront. The Christmas season was approaching, a time for family, for togetherness. I knew Jessica and Julian would likely be hosting a lavish holiday party, flaunting their wealth and social standing. They had always loved to exclude me to make me feel small and insignificant. This year, however, things would be different. I had received an invitation to the most exclusive Christmas gala in the city, an event attended by the city's elite, the very people Jessica had always aspired to impress. I had initially declined, preferring the quiet solitude of my own company, but now I was reconsidering. I parked my car in the driveway of my new home, a charming Victorian house with a sprawling garden, a far cry from the cramped apartment I'd been forced to move into after selling my old house. As I stepped inside, the aroma of freshly baked cookies filled the air. My housekeeper, Maria, had been busy preparing for the holidays. "Everything smells wonderful, Maria," I said, handing her my coat. "Thank you, Mrs. Miles," she replied with a warm smile. "I thought we might have a small Christmas gathering here this year, just a few close friends." I walked into my study, a room filled with books and artwork, a space that felt truly my own. I opened my laptop and began to browse online for dresses. I wasn't just attending the gala, I was going to make a statement. I wanted a dress that would capture the essence of my journey, a dress that would scream resilience, success, and quiet triumph. And as I scrolled through the pages of designer gowns, a particular shade of red caught my eye. It was the same vibrant red as the evening gown I had sold earlier that day, the one the woman had declared the most beautiful dress she'd ever seen. I smiled, a plan forming in my mind. Jessica's exclusion, their attempt to erase me, had inadvertently paved the way for my greatest triumph, and I intended to celebrate it in style. I clicked the Add to Cart button. The anticipation of the gala, and Jessica's reaction to my presence, a delicious secret I carried close to my heart. Sunlight streamed through the large windows of my shop, illuminating the rolls of vibrant fabrics and the gleaming sewing machines. My fingers, once clumsy and hesitant, now moved with practiced ease, stitching together a silk gown destined for a gala next month. It's hard to believe that only a few years ago, Jessica tossed me aside like a worn-out rag, telling me I was too old-fashioned to understand their modern life. Now, my old-fashioned skills were in high demand. The bell above the door chimed, a familiar sound that now brought a thrill of anticipation rather than a pang of loneliness. "Welcome to Candra's Creations," I called out, my voice warm and confident. A young woman with a nervous smile approached the counter. I heard you're the best in town," she stammered, clutching a crumpled sketch. "My wedding is next spring, and I'd be honored if you could design my dress." I smiled gently, taking the sketch from her trembling hands. "Of course, dear. Let's see what magic we can create together." Word of mouth spread like wildfire. Society ladies, businesswomen, even a few celebrities, all flocked to my little shop, eager for a touch of my unique style. Every stitch was a testament to my resilience, every completed garment a victory over the hurt and rejection I had endured. I hired two assistants, both talented young women who reminded me of a younger, less jaded Jessica. They treated me with respect, their eagerness to learn a constant source of joy. Mrs. Miles, Maria, the quieter of the two, said one afternoon, her voice hesitant. "There's a gentleman here to see you. He wouldn't give his name." I looked up from the intricate beadwork I was applying to a wedding veil. "Did he say what he wanted?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. Maria shook her head. "He just insisted on seeing you personally." With a sigh, I put down my needle. "All right, send him in." A tall, imposing figure stepped into the shop, his face shadowed by the brim of his hat. As he approached, my breath caught in my throat. It was Julian. He looked older, wearier, the youthful arrogance replaced by something that resembled regret. He removed his hat, revealing streaks of gray at his temples. "Candra," he began, his voice low and strained. "I know it's been a long time." "Yes," I interrupted, my voice cool and even. "It has." He shifted uncomfortably. "Jessica, she wants to see you." My heart pounded in my chest. After all these years, after the cruel words, the slammed doors, the silence that echoed louder than any scream, she wanted to see me. "Why?" I asked, the single word heavy with unspoken accusations. Julian hesitated, then spoke in a rush. "Things haven't been easy. We lost the house, the business, everything. Jessica, she's not well." I stared at him, my mind racing. Was this some kind of trick? A ploy to get money? But then I saw the genuine anguish in his eyes, the lines of worry etched deep into his face, and something unexpected stirred within me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a flicker of pity. "And what about my grandson?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Julian's gaze dropped to the floor. He asks about you sometimes. That was it. The chink in my armor. The one thing that could still break through my carefully constructed wall of indifference. "Tell Jessica," I said slowly, my voice regaining its strength, "that I'll be hosting my annual Christmas Eve party at my new country estate. If she wants to see me, she can come then." Julian looked up, surprise and a flicker of hope in his eyes. You'd be willing to see her?" I nodded, a small, tight smile playing on my lips. "Yes, but not at my shop, at my home. The one I bought with the money I earned building this business. The one she said I'd never be able to afford." I handed him a beautifully engraved invitation, the address embossed in gold. He took it with trembling hands, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. "Thank you, Kendra," he whispered. "Thank you." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. It's quite a place, isn't it?" he murmured, glancing around the bustling shop, now filled with the hum of sewing machines and the chatter of happy customers. I simply smiled, a sense of profound satisfaction washing over me. "It is," I said softly, my eyes fixed on the sparkling Christmas tree in the corner, already adorned with glittering ornaments. "It is indeed." The bell chimed as he left, the sound echoing the sweet melody of my triumph. Christmas Eve would be interesting. Sunlight streamed through the large windows of the small business development center, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. "So you're saying I could actually turn this hobby into a real business?" I asked, my voice still tinged with disbelief. Ms. Rodriguez, the advisor, smiled warmly. "Absolutely, Kendra. You have a unique skill set, a growing client base, and a clear passion for what you do. All the ingredients for success are right here." She tapped a finger on the neatly organized business plan I'd reluctantly brought with me. I still couldn't quite believe it. Jessica, my daughter-in-law, had scoffed when I'd started sewing again after they'd made it clear they didn't want me around anymore. "Seriously, Mom," she'd said, her voice dripping with condescension, "you think anyone will pay for that?" Julian, her fiancé, had just smirked. That smirk it still stung, but their dismissal had fueled a quiet fire in me. I poured my grief, my loneliness, into every stitch, transforming scraps of fabric into beautiful, bespoke creations. Word spread, and soon I had more orders than I could handle. "The next step," Ms. Rodriguez continued, pulling me back to the present, "is securing funding to expand. You'll need a larger workspace, more equipment, perhaps even hire some help." The thought of hiring staff felt surreal. Me, an employer, I'd spent most of my adult life as a homemaker, my world revolving around my family. Now, after they'd shut me out, I was building something entirely my own. "I have some savings," I admitted hesitantly, "from selling the house and a few other things." It had been a wrench to let go of the family home, filled with so many memories. The wedding china, the jewelry, even my grandmother's antique sewing machine, they were all gone. Each sale had felt like another small death. another piece of my past slipping away. But it had also been liberating. Each item sold represented a step further away from the pain, a step closer to a new beginning. Ms. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. That's a good start. And with a solid business plan, you'll be in a strong position to apply for a small business loan. She opened a folder, pulling out a sheet of paper. Here's a list of local banks that specialize in supporting small businesses. I recommend starting with these. I took the paper, my hand trembling slightly. It was just a list of names and addresses, but it felt like a lifeline, a path towards a future I never imagined. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Thank you so much. Ms. Rodriguez smiled. Don't thank me yet, Kendra. The hard work is still ahead of you, but I have a feeling you're more than capable of handling it. As I left the Business Development Center, I paused on the steps, taking a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the leaves on the trees were beginning to turn vibrant shades of red and gold. It was the same sky, the same trees I'd seen countless times before, but somehow, today, they looked different, brighter, more alive. For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope, a sense of purpose. Jessica and Julia may have thought they were pushing me aside, discarding me like some unwanted piece of furniture. But they had inadvertently given me the greatest gift of all, the push I needed to discover my own strength, my own potential. I glanced down at the list of banks in my hand, then at the sleek, modern building across the street. It was the headquarters of a luxury fashion magazine, its windows displaying glamorous models in exquisite gowns. An idea, bold and audacious, began to form in my mind. A slow smile spread across my face. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to show Jessica and Julian exactly what I was capable of. Maybe it was time for them to see what they'd thrown away. This Christmas, they would be receiving an invitation, not to my usual quiet Christmas Eve dinner, the one they had so casually dismissed last year. This invitation would be to something far more exclusive, something that would make them question everything they thought they knew about me, something that would make them finally understand the true meaning of the word success. And perhaps, just perhaps, it would make them regret the day they turned their backs on me, the day they thought they could diminish me, because they had unwittingly unleashed a force they couldn't comprehend. And now, that force was about to be reckoned with.